Any fans of the Libertarian Party here? Now, some of you Rand Paul supporters, and it sounded like there were a few in here, might not know this, but in 2016, the Libertarian Party also gets to nominate a candidate for president. The process has just started. And I'm very excited about our next speaker today. Austin Petersen may be the first member of the millennial generation to become president of the United States of America. That is an exciting possibility when you understand what the internet generation can bring to society today. And I met him back when he was the volunteer coordinator for the Libertarian Party in Washington, D.C. He went on to be a producer with Judge Napolitano at Fox News, and he is now the editor-in-chief of the Libertarian Republic and LibertyViral.com, both great websites you should check out. He does the Freedom Report podcast, and he's got, again, a great resume as an activist that goes back for years that he's been actively involved. And if you're one of these people who is trying to make the case, well, hey, if you really believe in freedom, you gotta settle for a conservative in 2016, we have the answer to that. And yes, there are plenty of other candidates running for the LP nomination, but it's very exciting to see that someone of my generation, I know I just turned 33 for the 5th time, so I also get to count myself as a millennial, just barely. It's very exciting to see that someone like Austin Petersen has developed the base of support to make it possible for him to put together a serious campaign. So please give a warm welcome for the producer, Austin Petersen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here today to talk to you about one thing: fighting for freedom. Now, I know we libertarians, we're not used to fighting. Not because we're wimps, not because we're neckbeards, not because we're betas or cucks. No, it's because we understand that fighting is almost always irrational. But my friends, we are up against irrational people. And if you doubt that, you have only to look at the two major parties. You know, I always find it interesting between how they govern and how they campaign. You know, when they govern, they take an entire loaf of freedom that we used to have like it's nothing. And then just to show how magnanimous they are, they toss a few crumbs back to us. And then when campaign season rolls around, you know what they do? They say, look at all those crumbs you have. Oh, if someone else gets elected, you won't have those. Isn't that horrible? And it works, because no one is standing there saying, screw the crumbs, we want the whole loaf of bread back, and we'll take it by force if we have to. All we do, thank you, all we do is we mouth platitudes about how there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. Well, it's not enough to say that there ain't no such thing as a free lunch, because we gotta stop these bullies from getting their free lunch by taking it from us. Now, if we want to win, it's going to be an uphill battle, because it is now crystal clear that we can expect no help from the two major parties. Let's start with Republicans. Now, I know a lot of people here probably like Rand Paul, the Republicans, because of Rand Paul. But you know what? Rand Paul's not leading in the polls. Donald Trump is leading in the polls. Now, listen, Donald Trump's a lot of fun. He's a great entertainer. But if you think Republicans have anything in common with libertarians, just look at what Trump stands for. He's more socialist than Barack Obama on health care. Elizabeth Warren loves his tax plan. Why? Because it targets Wall Street. And he wants to leave Medicare and Social Security untouched. I thought that was what these evil socialist Democrats were supposed to be like. So why is Donald Trump leading in the polls? I'll tell you why. Because he wants to round up every illegal immigrant in this country, deport them to Mexico, and build a wall to keep them out. And that's all you have to say to get Republicans to love you. They will sell out our country for socialism, just so long as they don't have to dial 1 for English. I guess pushing a button on a phone is a microaggression. Right? So while the Republicans might have helped us in the past, let's not kid ourselves. They say that they support innovation, but when a Muslim boy builds a clock, they try to shut him down more fiercely than patent trolls. They may say they support economic freedom, but when an immigrant wants to sell his or her labor for less than a white man, they complain about unfair competition louder than the unions. Yeah, they may say they support the rule of law, but when a bigoted county clerk refuses to do her job, they talk like they're defending sanctuary cities. They may say that they want the government out of marriage and family, but they cheer when Rick Santorum and Mike Huckabee audition for the role of American Ayatollah. Don't mistake their opportunism for principle. And the Democrats, oh man, don't make me laugh. Oh yeah, sure, they'll complain loudly about violations of civil liberties for terrorists, but then they turn a blind eye to innocent college men convicted by feminist star chambers. They say, oh yeah, do what you want with your body when you want an abortion, but not when you want a big gulp. They'll let immigrants work on farms, sure, but not as Uber drivers. They celebrate the freedom to marry for gays, but then put the thumbscrews on divorced men. They'll complain about being required to pay for costly, inefficient wars, but not for costly, inefficient health care. They'll tell us that Black Lives Matter, and I'm sure they mean it because Planned Parenthood literally makes a killing on the corpses of black children. They claim to support blacks, women, immigrants, and peace. The only blacks that Democrats support are cop killers and criminals. The only women they support are baby killers and false rape victims. The only immigrants they support are the ones that their special interests can exploit. And the only peace that they support is bending the knee to fascism and theocrats. The Democrats make the worst people in the Republican Party look like they almost have a point. Americans need a better alternative. We are that alternative. But neither of these two parties will listen to us. Not unless we learn to fight. I'm here to tell you how we can do that. Now, I'm not a violent man. I'm a happy warrior, but war doesn't make me happy. But I recognize something that not everyone else does. We libertarians must learn how to fight, not just so that we can win, but also so that we can learn how to not fight. Now, there are two ways to not fight. One is to let the statists win. And if that's what you want, you're in the wrong place. There's the door. The other is to make the statists afraid to fight us. That's the one that I want to do. In order to do that, we need an army, and we need a strategy to defeat them. Now, I own a website called the Libertarian Republic, and a lot of people accuse me of running that website just to make money for myself. They say, oh, Austin, you're the Justin Bieber of libertarianism. You know, you just want to get traffic, get money, and give us all a bad name. Well, not only is that not true, but I'd have to be an idiot to do that, because you know who the government loves to come after when there's no one left to fight it? Rich people and libertarians. So if I use libertarians to get rich that way, I'd be painting two giant bullseyes on my back, and I probably wouldn't get to keep my money for very long. So if I only wanted to make money, no offense, but doing it through a libertarian website is probably the dumbest way to do it. But I don't just want money. I want people. I want an army. And through my website and podcasts and public appearances and through this campaign, that is what I'm building, an army. And I hope that by the time I finish this talk, you will want to join that army, because I'm going to tell you how we win. We win by being like two groups of people, George Washington and Saul Alinsky on one hand, and Bruce Lee and Sun Tzu on the other. Now you're probably wondering, what the heck do George Washington and Saul Alinsky have in common? Has anyone here ever heard of a man named Quintus Fabius Maximus? Quintus Fabius Maximus was a Roman general who defeated the legendary Carthaginian Hannibal. And he did it using a strategy that some of you may have heard of. It's called Fabian strategy. What's Fabian strategy? Well, to quote that source of all knowledge, Wikipedia, Fabian strategy is a strategy where pitched battles and frontal assaults are avoided in favor of wearing an opponent down through attrition. And this is very important. The side adopting this strategy believes that time is on their side. We libertarians know that time is on our side. Why? Rudyard Kipling put it best in his poem, The Gods of the Copybook Headings. In this poem, Kipling was making fun of people who thought that they could build up socialist utopias where the laws of the market wouldn't apply. And this poem was his way of saying, guess what, guys? You're going to fail. So think of this as my one and only shout out to the Bernie Sanders campaign tonight. Here's the final verse of Kipling's poem. And that after this is accomplished, and the brave new world begins, when all men are paid for existing, and no man must pay for his sins, as surely as water will wet us, as surely as fire will burn, the gods of the copybook headings with terror and slaughter return. In other words, no matter how much you think you've built up a socialist utopia, the laws of economics will catch up with you. So time is definitely on our side, because the longer the modern state tries to survive, the more it will fail. Our job is to hasten that process. Now, we can't beat the state in a pitched battle. It's got more soldiers who are better organized with far superior weapons. And that's true politically too. They have stronger political machines and more money than we do. But that doesn't mean we can't win the war. Because as big and powerful and imposing as the state is, there's one thing that its defenders are terrified of us figuring out. The greatest weakness of big government is that it's big. And as someone who's done martial arts, let me tell you from firsthand experience, big things are slow and they tire easily. You know how Grover Norquist talks about starving the beast? Well, today I'm going to talk about starving the ham beast. Because that's what we're up against. A giant, fat, unwieldy state that's been gorging itself on taxpayer money like a hypocritical body positivity activist at Ben & Jerry's. We can beat something like that just as long as we don't let it sit on us. And I'm not just saying that to be cute, because our last Secretary of State didn't even understand how email works. You know, there was a vice presidential candidate in 2008. She had her email hacked by somebody who had barely any technical knowledge. The federal government still has trouble figuring out how to digitize huge chunks of its data. The fact is, the state is slow to change and even slower to adapt. We've seen this movie before during the American Revolutionary War. The British expected to meet George Washington in pitched traditional battles. They had no idea how to react when he started attacking them with guerrilla warfare. And he was right to do so, because the British were slow, ponderous, and deep in enemy territory. Well, right now, anything the government tries to regulate is enemy territory. And like most occupiers, they're losing. Uber shoved them out by being faster and more popular. SOPA crashed and burned because Google and Wikipedia moved more quickly than the lobbyists. The FBI even had to tell feminists that they lacked the resources to even begin policing Twitter, let alone the rest of the internet. The state is a bear in a forest full of wasp nests, and we libertarians are the wasps. All we need to do is figure out where to sting. And that's where Saul Alinsky comes in. Now, Alinsky came up with several rules for radicals, which was basically Fabian warfare applied to politics. And at the risk of boring you, let me just tell you what a couple of these rules are. Here's one. Power is not only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. Now, I love this one. Have you ever argued with some statist who whines that you have some massive, rich, white, patriarchal system on your side? You know what I love about those people? Even when I don't have anywhere near the power that they think I do, that means that if I fight them, that I can win just by threatening them with it. And that's another Alinsky rule, by the way. The threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. I don't know what statists think that my all-powerful patriarchal allies will do to them if I win, but I know it's probably worse than anything I could dream up. Which means that whatever threat that I make is one that they're going to take so seriously that actually getting off their butts and doing anything to me will take a lot of courage. And as we all know, statists are not good at courage. And that's why we're going to demand it of them every single opportunity we get, because that's another rule. Go outside the expertise of the enemy. Look for ways to increase anxiety and uncertainty. Well, our army is going to give statists panic attacks. For every time they try to regulate business, we will be waiting with the workers who suffer. Every time they try to regulate our bodies, we will throw those bodies on the machinery of the state until it breaks. Every time they try to regulate our wallets, we will make that cash herd through ads, emails, direct mail, and every other weapon that Citizens United has placed in our hands. Every time they try to regulate our internet, we will drown their servers in a flood of emails, texts, and tweets. And we won't be gentle with what we say either, because that's another rule. Ridicule is man's most potent weapon. To all the statists who are listening, if you think that you can withstand our assaults, I just got one question for you. Do you even liberty, bro? I hope you guys are having fun. Not just because I am, but because that's actually another way to win. Emma Goldman said that she didn't want a revolution without dancing. Well, you can rest assured that the Freedom Ninjas Army is going to be dancing and laughing all over the graves of our enemies, because nobody puts Bieber in the corner. Some of you might not know this, but I actually worked for the Libertarian Party for a year. And during that time, I had an internship team. And, most people assume that interns are going to suck at their jobs, but I didn't. I found out what they like to do, and I made them do it as much as possible. And guess what? They didn't suck at their jobs. That's why there's a place for every libertarian in my army. If you're a policy wonk, I want you in my brain trust. If you're an activist, I want you volunteering, making calls, and knocking on doors. If you're a writer, I want you writing op-eds and letters to the editor. Hell, even if you are a neckbeard who lives in his mother's basement, I'd be happy if you started throwing Hot Pockets at the nearest census taker. We are libertarians because we believe in the power of the individual. And an army that is made up of individuals at their best will always beat an army that doesn't want to be there. And if you've ever spent any time in a DMV, real statists don't want to be there either. And that's just one more thing we need to do, and that's pick our battles right. Alinsky says it this way: a tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. Well, we don't have the luxury of picking fights that are going to drag on us. When the time comes, we're going to strike hard, strike fast, strike first, and strike without mercy. Now, I've been blessed to have trained under many incredibly talented masters of karate. And all of them taught me that karate is for defense only. But once the battle is engaged, the person who strikes first almost always wins. And when you look at big government, it is so big and so cumbersome that if we do not manage to hit them first and hit them where it hurts, then we will have failed. And once we've attacked, we're not going to let up. We're not even going to let them hit back if we can help it. Because that's another rule of Alinsky's that I want you to learn. You've got to keep the pressure on, ladies and gentlemen. Never let up. But wait, it's not all about destruction. We're not nihilists, whatever Salon says, I want to lead this country, and I'm under no illusion about what that means. I can't just tear down my opponents. I need to offer an alternative of my own that is better than what they're offering. So here are a couple of things that I'm going to do differently when I'm president. First, I'm going to reduce our entire tax burden to a single flat tax. Not just because the current system is unfair or because a flat tax is better for the economy. I'm going to do it for a much simpler reason. Because I think that the response to a political opponent should be a counter-argument, not an IRS audit. Thank you. Let them explain the science instead of trying to force it down our throats. Now, mind you, I wouldn't even necessarily listen if that was all they did, because their credibility bled out along with the millions of gallons of toxic waste that they spilled into the Amherst River in Colorado. Now, those are just a couple of the solutions that I want to see followed in Washington, but if you're a libertarian policy wonk and you have others, I'm all ears. So I've talked about Alinsky in Washington, but what about Sun Tzu and Bruce Lee? Well, Sun Tzu and Bruce Lee both understood the importance of something that we libertarians are sometimes bad at. I'm talking about flexibility. Let's be honest, a lot of us can be pretty rigid and dogmatic. But you know what? We can't do this. We cannot defeat the state. I know principles work for a lot of us on our college debate teams, but the fight with the state isn't a debate, it's a war. So while talking about perfectly consistent, detailed principles might have won us points with judges, they'd get us panned by Sun Tzu. Because Sun Tzu says that all warfare is based on deception. If we want to beat the state, we can't let them know what we're going to do. If we're going to beat the statists, we can't hand them weapons with which to attack us. Instead, we have to confuse them. So if they think we're going to fight, we should lure them into a false sense of security. If they think we've already surrendered, we should surprise them by attacking them from the last direction they expect. And above all, we cannot tell the enemy what our tactical plans are. No advertising your delegate strategies on the Daily Poll. No talking about detailed policy agendas on the Lou Rockwell forums. No bragging about how many emails you sent on Reddit. Remember, we are the insurgents. We are the freedom fighters. The big government types will be watching us closely, because they know that they can't last long if we can make any fight with them go on. Sun Tzu says that there is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare. And while war might be the health of the state, it can also be its downfall, because a state that loses is a state that will be overthrown. People will not bow before the tax-gobbling ham-beast when a lean libertarian fighting machine has it on the ground blubbering. Which brings me to my final lesson, for which I have to give credit to Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee's philosophy of fighting was simple. Be like water, friends. Why? Because water changes its shape to fit whatever situation it's in. Because the state is not a flexible, changeable institution. The state is slow and porous as a boulder, and it will always be that way. But we can be like water in all its forms. Like ice, we can immobilize the state. Like water, we will erode it. Like steam, we will rise above as it sinks. Statists may think that they can defeat us with their weapons and their political machines. I say let them try. Let them try to serve us fire and steel. We will be like water. We will douse their fire and let it flow to the ash heap of history. We will rust their steel and toss it down the trash chute of memory. Let them try to call us out by using shame or fear tactics. We will be like water. We will be the tears of rage that they weep when their shaming backfires. We will be the sweat that drips and burns in their eyes when their scare tactics fail. They may be as mindless as worker ants serving their big fat government queen, but we are the river that will drown their ant heap of totalitarianism. We will move to take the queen. My friends, my name is Saul Petersen, and I'm running for president. But more than that, thank you, more than that, I'm running for Commander-in-Chief of the Army of Freedom. The United States used to lead that army, but it didn't lead solely through force of arms. It led because its people were free. Join me and become that free people. Join me and become that free army. Join me and let's fight for the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you.